family. We back at it. All right, let me get my life together. Oh man. All right, here we go. We on screen. Fantastic. So glad to be back with you for another episode of Soul Swami Live. Man, get out of here. All right. So glad to be with you for another episode of Soul Swami Live. Uh, I am Soul Swami. And if this is your first time here, this channel is all about healing or the evolution of us becoming the best version of ourselves. We do that in trying to create a collective energy that we can tap into, or just the sheer understanding that we aren't alone in this journey. Healing is a communal event, and we are here building a community for people who are trying to heal, right? We do that through information, live energy readings. We do exercises, homework, and all the good things that you can think of to help you be able to evolve into the best version of you. Tonight, Tuesday nights, is our more informative show. On Tuesdays, we actually are having a discussion, or we are talking about ego. We move from the physical aspects of ego to the spiritual aspect, or identity based ego. And today is book club, which is the spinoff of our Tuesday show, in an effort to allow us to reconnect with the childlike energy in us by having someone read to us. So this is very much a relaxing time. So if you're joining in now, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, do all those things so you can get the notification for our Tuesday show, which is informative, right? So generally, at the beginning of every show, we do a little bit of energy work. And man, listen, I am torn. So this week we are on the sacral. Sacral has been showing up, not just for me, but as I've been seeing it. So maybe it is for me, so I can get my emotions intact. The sacral is the energy point for your sensuality, your sense of pleasure, your emotions, your creativity, and relationships. It is the focal point of relationships. If you are into color therapy, the color for your sacral is orange, hence the orange lighting, orange shirt. So if you're into color therapy, you want to make sure you spend some time eating orange foods, wearing orange colors, or blend that up with some light therapy and spend some time in some orange light like we got going on, right? If you are into essential oil scratch, your sacral is right below your belly button, and it does include your sexual organs, right? But if you are into essential oils and aromatherapy, you want to think rose, patchouli, orange, clary sage, all good to ignite the energy of your sacral. If you are into crystals and gemstones, you want to think tiger's eye, carnelian, amber, orange calcite, citrine, which that is a big example of citrine, if you want to know what it looks like. It low-key looks like a amethyst cousin, but citrine and bronzite are all very good examples for your sacral. But again, orange is the color You want to think orange, 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 orange highlights, solid orange colors, whatever. When you're really thinking about stones as well, some variation of orange are all good examples, are all good items to ignite the energy of your sacral. So the next thing we do is a little bit of sound therapy. And during this time, all you really have to do is just relax. Rid yourself of the energy of the day and attract or put yourself in a space of relaxation so that you can enjoy the book being read. We're almost at the end of it too. So again, think about your thoughts, clear your mind, do all those good things that help you to relax during this time while I play the bowl. Boop, 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 boop. Next, we do a little breath work. Earlier this week, we did 478, and I think I want to stick with 478. If you are unfamiliar with breath work, the numbers generally tell you how long to inhale, how long to hold your breath, and then how long to exhale. During this time, all you really have to do is just listen to the sound of my voice as I guide us through this breathing exercise. So we will breathe in for a 4 count, hold for a 7 count, and release for an 8 count. But again, all you really have to do is just focus in on all you really have to do is just focus in on your breathing, paying attention to your breath, and being mindful of the thoughts that come across you as we do this. And after this, we'll do some affirmations. So, on the count of 3, family, we will start with the breath work 478. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Last time. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. So I know I said we was gonna do 4, 7, 8, but I guess my spirit had something different in mind because we wound up doing box breathing. And I ain't even recognized it till we had already done one set that I was doing 4, 4, 4 and not 4, 7, 8. So what that wound up being is an example of honoring ourselves. Instead of trying to correct it and trying to change it to what I wanted it to be, I allowed my spirit to continue to lead, and we finish what it started. So we wound up doing box breathing again, which works perfectly as much as 4, 7, 8, but different number count. The next thing that we do is some affirmations. These are things that you want to file in your memory, use as a part of your daily routine, use it as a routine. They're good for helping ignite the energy and calm the energy that comes with the sacral. So whenever you are dealing with some sacral issues, which is your sense of security, you're a little emotional, you're dealing with some creative blocks, you having some interesting times navigating relationships, or you lost your sense of pleasure, these are things that you can say to remind you and reignite that energy. During this time, all you have to do is listen to me and repeat. I am a creative being. I deserve to enjoy life. I am emotionally balanced. I welcome sensuality into my life. I am worthy and lovable. I am a creative being. I deserve to enjoy life. I am emotionally balanced. I welcome sensuality into my life. And I am worthy and lovable. Worthy and lovable. Worthy and lovable. All right, we can get this party started. I'm trying to think, man, because really, it's driving me a little crazy. But crystal bowls are on sale. And I have been waiting for a long time for crystal bowls to be on sale. And they have been as high as $400 for a set of them. And they down to $237. And I'm over here having difficulty in trying to decide if I want to purchase them at $237. But I do remember they talking about $296 now, but I know for sure last year they was over $300. So, and woo. Then outside of that, so when I went to Milwaukee to get my master's degree, a few of the people that I had to lean on I went there and I didn't know anybody. A few of the people that I had to lean on as a support system were people that work for the universities, the chair of the department. Even when the chair of the department retired, the new chair looked out for me. It was I don't want to call it a guidance counselor, but it was a counselor that looked out for me. And then I had my advisor that looked out for me while I was there. And unfortunately, after a battle with cancer, my advisor wound up passing. And my feelings a little hurt because I cried in front of that lady more times than I care to remember or care to count. And her and the other people, they are seriously some of the reason why I was able to even graduate, because man, Milwaukee was a very interesting place. So I was thankful to have them in my life, and they really did help to make me feel valuable, important, intelligent, worthy, all of these things, to the point like that and no shade, but my family is very funny about people of other races. But I ain't never heard my family say this specifically about Caucasian people, but my mama thought they did so well in looking out for me that they moved up on her list of people she loved as well too. So I'm really saddened by the loss of someone who was or played a pivotal and important part in my life, right? So rest in peace, Deborah Wisniewski. You definitely will be missed and are missed already. So, this is your weekly reminder to also purchase, support the channel, support yourself with your own development by purchasing the 7 Spaces of Healing, available now on Amazon. It is a good foundational book to get you started in your evolution of healing and becoming the best version of yourself. It describes 7 spaces that you want to cultivate within yourself, and make sure that you are part of these spaces to support your evolution. That is a space of love, a space of healing, a space for solitude, a space for trust, a space for risk without judgment, a space for accountability, and a space for forgiveness. All very important spaces. And you can help yourself by purchasing the 7 Spaces of Healing, available now on Amazon. All right. So Apollo and Emma are together. They went back to Jorgensen's, Nudsenson, something. The house, Jorgensen's house, who was bringing food to Emma while she was in the woods, and Apollo found them, but they together after Apollo unalived them. They went to the house and tried to burn it down, and then kindergartner showed up. So they downstairs trying to burn him up in the house and get answers at the same time. We are on, if you're reading along, we are on chapter 99. Apollo bent and pulled at the iPad, watching the body. His eyes stared up at the ceiling. The protective cover had been soaked through with blood. But then when he slipped the device out, it was fine. When he looked at the other monitors, 5 of the 8 men remained in their seat, watching with nearly catatonic glaziness. What would this show offer next? Apollo pushed both monitors off the desk, and they fell backwards and cracked on the floor. Curiosity overcame Apollo. There was one thing he had to see, a question he needed answered. They pulled at kindergartner's sweaters, lifting the right side. I think Cal must have hit him at least once, Apollo said. But when he lifted the shirt high enough, the wound didn't look made by a bullet. Instead, the flesh hung loose, and the skin appeared to have 3 long parallel tails. Good for you, Cal, Emma said. The heat above became powerful enough to make both of them sweat. More smoke curled down into the basement through the floorboards. Soon it would fill this space. The sound of wood crackling played through the basement. The heat turned oppressive, and the smoke now obscured by exposed beams in the ceiling. Apollo and Emma covered their mouths. Outside they heard sirens. No doubt the neighbors were out in full force. Apollo and Emma weren't going to be escaping via the driveway anymore. They scanned the basement. An old blue wash machine and dryer set side by side. There was a supply closet containing a threadbare broom and 2 nearly toothless rakes, a shovel with splintered handle, and a worn-down work gloves. Because it was an unfinished basement, the ceiling showed woodwork and floorboards of the first floor, and even the piping was visible, running from the kitchen, connecting, and the bathrooms, leading to a broiler tucked in the far corner of the basement. The huge upright cylinder looked like a missile. Pipes ran from its top and up into the ceiling. Why did they have so many space heaters if they had this big boiler down here in the basement? Apollo asked, staring at the machine. The pipes are cut, Emma said, pointing to the ceiling. All of them. Kindergartner's blood appeared in their peripheral vision. The pool had found a level of ground, slightest of angles, and begun rolling downward. It turned into a tributary, searching for its confluence. It ran towards Apollo and Emma, and for only a moment Apollo imagined that the man's blood sought them out. Instead, it found its way to the broiler, rolling underneath it. From below the broiler, as they moved closer, they heard a faint dribbling sound. Apollo set the iPad down. He and Emma moved to one side of the broiler and pressed their hands to get it. Together they pushed, and the broiler rocked slightly. It was trying to upend the fridge. It was like trying to upend a fridge or a grandfather clock. Push again, and the broiler tipped. When it fell to the ground, it clattered and cracked. And below it, they found a large hole cut in the concrete. Kindergartner's blood dribbled into that darkness. The hole, not even or neat, looked as if someone had spent many nights here, chipping and chopping. The work did not seem recent. They looked into the portal, hard to even say how far down they would fall. Firemen barked to each other on the street. The floorboards above Apollo and Emma were burnt black by now. They sat and scooted to the hole, but before she dropped through, Apollo stopped her. "Wait," he said. "We need one more thing." He took out his phone and turned it on. "You're making a fucking phone call?" Emma said. He reached for the iPad and opened it again. He swiped and a series of apps appeared. On the other end of the line, Patrice picked up. "You're still alive then?" he said, sounding relieved. "Your mom came by here this morning looking for you. She's real worried. Did you call her? She said you sounded off." "Patrice, you have to shut up. I won't be able to call you again. Tell me," he said, "do you have the Daylight app in the App Store?" "You saw it yourself," Patrice said. "Biggest bug is that you still only get one use out of it. Drains so much battery power." Emma sat at the edge of the hole, looking like a woman hanging her feet off a pier. "I need it," Apollo said. Patrice sighed on the phone. "Well, it's there," he said. "It costs $3.99. I could change the price so it's free. Then you could just download it." When Patrice said that, a new idea came to Apollo. One so good it actually made him laugh, even in the midst of all this. "I do want you to change the price. Is there a maximum that you can charge?" "It's supposed to be $999.99, but there's an easy way around that. Can you do that now? This is me." Patrice said. "Of course I can. How much?" $70,000, Apollo said. The laughter on the other end of the line came so loudly, even Emma heard it before Apollo hung up. By the time he found the app in the App Store, the price had been changed. He tapped to purchase. He squatted beside Emma, and together they watched the download bar progress. "But what's the point if we can only use it once?" Emma said. "The park is still half a mile north of here." "The old man told me a story," Apollo said. "Do you know what kills trolls?" "Daylight," she said. The house above rumbled a thunderous crash, so loud it seemed possible a wall had collapsed. Soon the second floor might come down on the first, and then the first would be driven down into the basement. Emma looked back to where the stairs had been. Hard to say if they were still there, through the black smoke. Emma gripped Apollo's hand, and he lowered her into the hole, not as deep as they'd feared. He handed the iPad down next. The nuts in line and their centuries of service had come to its end. By evening, there'd be nothing left of them but scorched wood and bones. Section 8, The Wilderness, Chapter 100. Apollo expected Emma to make magic. He climbed down into the dark alongside her, the passageway walls of compacted earth and tight around them, hardly wide enough for one person, let alone two. The path ahead, a long, dark gullet, and above them, a house on fire. Though they were standing chest to chest, it was so dark he couldn't see her face. His eyes hadn't adjusted yet. He wanted to reach out and touch her cheeks or her nose to be sure that was really her. What are you waiting for? Emma asked. I'm waiting for you, Apollo said. Your light. You said we could use this only once, she said, tapping the iPad. Not that. I'm talking about, the light I saw you in the forest. It floated all around you like it was a cloud. Emma remained quiet. He couldn't see her face to read her expressions. You controlled Jorgen's dreams, Apollo said, sounding exasperated and desperate. The trees parted for you. Don't tell me you don't know what I'm talking about. Emma finally spoke. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I was on my own and keeping Brian alive, keeping myself alive, working on Jorgen day and night, and it was killing me, Apollo. You saw me, didn't you? I wasn't able to do it because I was so powerful. I was able to do it because I had no other choice. I had to do it alone, so I did. But now, I don't have to do it alone. At least I hope I don't. We could be stronger together, but that means you have to help me. Can you do that? Will you? Apollo nodded. They moved forward. The passageway became even brighter, the roof coming down at an angle, so they had to lower their heads. It felt like a funnel, a chute, the same as one might use on a cow or a pig in a slaughterhouse. Don't be mad at my sister, Emma whispered. Please. You're thinking about that right now? Both spoke in hushed tones, though. It sounded louder down there. Please, Apollo. It seems ridiculous to you, but it matters to me. Kim lied to me, he said. I put a check in her hand, and she didn't blink. Here, Apollo stopped moving. Their eyes had adjusted enough that he could make out an outline behind him. Why did she believe you, he asked. What did you say that convinced her? She didn't believe me, Emma said, but she's my sister. She wasn't going to betray you, Apollo. She was protecting me. They scrambled forward in the dark. The passageway finally opened into a large space, an earthen amphitheater, a series of ringed ridges that fed down to a broader floor of flattened earth. Kindergarten had shown them on the camera. Where those other men were watching Apollo and Emma now? They moved down the ringed levels, shallower stairs. As they approached the floor of the amphitheater, Apollo felt Emma's eyes as surely as a touch. He felt himself shiver with the desire to tell her about Brian West, the dream that was not a dream but a memory. Kindergarten had clung to his belief that he'd cared for his family, that he'd done something so horrific as an act of love. Did Brian West feel the same when he plunged his only child into steaming hot water? When he held him under? He must have. Against all common sense, he must have. When Apollo had become impatient with Emma, when he'd become cruel, how had he justified it to himself? He was trying to focus on Brian, to be the kind of father he never had. What lengths will people go to stretch? What lengths will people stretch to believe they're still good? I'm thinking about that because we were talking about the moral ego and what lengths will people stretch to believe they're good? A lot. The example we use is racist people. Racist people don't think racism is bad. They think they are good people coming from a good perspective because they are doing that mental trigonometry to do it. They are stretching to believe they're still good people. Even their good is okay with oppressing others, which is interesting. Apollo scanned the higher ridges of the arena. The darkness hid everything more than 2 feet away, the effect more disconcerting. In this open space, in time their eyes would adjust to the dark, but just now they felt nearly blind. In the tunnel they'd been cramped. But out here, a tank might be sitting at arm's length and they wouldn't realize his main gun was pointed at them until it fired. Hands outstretched, skitching forward in small increments, legs slightly bent as if expecting a blow. They moved forward until they reached the far end of the arena's stone wall. Then pawed alongside it to traverse its space. Because of the shadows, because of because of the almost hypnotizing rhythm of their feet on the loose dirt, they felt dizzy as they moved. Then Apollo bumped into something. When he hit it with his foot, there was a low, hollow thump. Emma went down on her knee. A large gray polythene storage box, the lid still on. Emma and Apollo pulled the top off, trying to stay quiet. Both breathed so heavily they sounded like winded dogs. A small body lay in there, on its side, naked. They knelt there, waiting, listening, and then they heard it, faint but regular, the child's breathing. Without the lid, it echoed in the chamber. Emma choked with shock. It sounded like she was retching. She dropped the iPad and reached into the storage box. The bottom of the bin showed layers of dead leaves and dirt, a makeshift mattress. She lifted the body, and there it was, Sleeping Beauty, Brian. He looked big for a 6-month-old, but that's because he was 10 months old. Being lifted, being held, caused the boy's breathing to change. A long, low gurgle escaped those lips. His skin felt so cold to the touch. His eyelids fluttered open. Emma leaned close to see them. The baby yawned and squinted his eyes. But even after the child woke, the echoing, steady breathing in the chamber didn't change. It went on as it had been, rhythmic and deep, not an echo. Apollo realized, but a matched pattern, something else breathing in sync beside the child. But now, even that sound stopped, and all around them came a low rumble like a bowling ball rolling on wood. They thought the storage box had been sitting inside a portion of the amphitheater wall, but now the wall moved. The wall rolled like an alligator spinning its prey in the water. Apollo and Emma were still on their knees, there in the dark, an eye as large as a manhole covered open. Jotun, Trollday, Troll. Chapter 101. A hot, dank wind blew from the hole in the wall, a gas that stank of dirt. The cave's chill, the creature's exhalation became a cloud of fog that filled the floor. Apollo and Emma went back on their knees. Emma held tight to Brian as she fell. Brian squirmed in her arms but could hardly wiggle in her grip. She would not let him go again. A shape emerged from the hole, but in the darkness and cover of cloud. Its particulars were tough to see. Its dimensions were clear, though. An arm as thick as a tree stump moved above their heads. Emma fled awkwardly, stumbling off. Apollo looked up and felt as if he'd been caught before a great, yawning door, and he had to let this thing in. Another breath, another cloud filled the dark amphitheater. The arm hung in the air a moment, then its tip trembled and stretched, an enormous fist opening. Hard to call the digits fingers. They were either too many or too few. Apollo couldn't get his bearings for the fog. But in the moment, he smelled his bodies, a stink like rotten milk, and he nearly went sick right there. He looked to his left to find Emma and Brian weren't there. At least that relieved him. The fingers on the misshapen hand showed great nails at the tips. The troll slammed the fingers down into the dirt. The thumb landed right in the middle of an open storage bin. If Brian had still been inside, he would have been impaled. Emma yelped nearby. Brian, hearing her, reached up and found her chin. With the nails dug into the dirt, the troll pulled his body out of the hole where it had been sleeping. It rose to its full height, the body unfurling until it stood as tall as the sail of a sloop. Its mouth opened wide, and it breathed a third breath, deeper than the others. Once more, Apollo found himself swimming in that mist. It snorted heavily through its nostrils twice. He felt the moisture dabble across his scalp and forehead like dew. He couldn't move, and worse still, He felt a sick wave of something like nostalgia. To his horror, he almost called out Brian West's name. The troll pulled his thick nails out of the dirt. It slapped the storage bin. One quick touch, and the container flipped over end, landing about a foot away. The air filled with dead leaves and dirt. Apollo threw up an arm to shield his eyes. When the bin landed, its thump echoed and the troll moved fast, a massive shape looping forward on short, thick legs, something simian about it. Even more so when it bent to the ground, sniffing closer and closer to the bin. Apollo turned to his feet to try to track Emma, but his shoes scuffed the dirt louder than he would have expected, or maybe there weren't any other sounds to compete. Before Apollo could move, the creature's eyes were on him. Nothing to do, no time to run, nowhere to hide. 2 strides, and it came near. The troll stooped so close now, Apollo could reach out and touch it. From here, he saw its greenish skin with collected dead leaves and clots of dirt. Tiny bones from squirrels or birds were embedded in its flesh like pins in a pincushion. It snorted and breathed again, and this time Apollo's whole face went wet with moisture, but he stifled the impulse to retch. Its enormous eyes faced Apollo, and they were flat, off-white discs. The troll couldn't see him because the troll was almost blind. No wonder it relied on his nose. Its nostrils like recessed like a bat. It sniffed the air around Apollo, sniffed again, and finally a great rip appeared in his face, somewhere below the nose. Its teeth were as large and jagged as his nails, but the creature didn't tear into Apollo. Instead, it yawned and blew another wave of fetid breath. The pair of them lost in the cloud. When Apollo blinked, he could almost hear water running nearby. It sniffed near him one more time, then turned away. What saved me? He asked. Now that it had moved, Apollo could see where it had been sleeping. Not a nook, but the mouth of a tunnel. A different quality of darkness lay at the far end of that passage. Moonlight. He saw moonlight out there. And the small stones running up the slope, the park, the outside world, they escaped and laid 50 feet ahead. The troll brought a hand tight around the bend, crushing it. It scanned the amphitheater and its mouth opened, its belly expanded, filling with air. Now it pronounced a howl like a nightmare from some distant age. Nearby, Emma had been trying to make her way back the way they'd come. Jorgen's house might be burning, but it wasn't a fucking monster on the hunt. She wasn't thinking clearly, but it was the best idea she could form. And yet, when she heard that howl, like standing with your ear to a foghorn, she collapsed into a crouch, just as Apollo did. She saw the iPad lay a foot away from where she stood, where she went down. The only one not thrown by the bellowing, in fact, was the baby. Emma's arms couldn't keep a hold of him because she'd stretched out to grab the iPad. She couldn't hold on to both, not with one wiggling to break free. Brian rolled himself into the dirt, then did the most shocking thing Apollo and Emma had seen yet. He walked. And where was he walking? Back towards the troll. Only 3 steps. Arms out in the dark, but it was enough for Emma to feel wounded, nearly mortally. Should she run after Brian, or was there a better strategy? She activated the iPad. When the screen lit up, she became bathed in the light of the home screen. The troll sensed a change in the gloom. It turned in her direction. Brian turned back toward her too, then threw one arm over his eyes, unaccustomed to the glow. He squeaked, a cry of distress. Both Emma and Apollo tried not to notice how close in tone the cry sounded to the troll's bellow. Emma didn't look up. She had to work. She found the app and turned the screen so it faced the others. She stood and held the device higher, hoping to spare her son's eyes. She tapped the icon once, and the chamber flared. Brian screeched like a tiny primate and fell forward on his face, flailing with surprise that seemed like pain. The troll stumbled too, slumping backward and making that foghorn sound. But it didn't turn to stone. The fucking app did not win the day. In a moment, that thing would find its balance and be all over them. They needed a new plan. Emma rose and ran to the center of the chamber. The sun is rising, she shouted. Apollo understood her idea immediately, intuitively. If the troll feared the sun, then it might run from the light. If he could get outside, Emma and Brian would be able to sleep out too. He ran for the tunnel. He looked over his shoulders and shouted, "The sun is rising." The troll shivered with confusion. First, his head darted toward the sound of Apollo's voice, but then it looked upward, throwing an arm out as if it could bat away the threat. "The sun is rising," Apollo shouted again, his voice trailing down the long throat of the tunnel. The troll spun left, then right, unsure, confused. The battery life of the iPad was nearly depleted, but for the moment, Emma wielded a shining star. Apollo escaped the passageway into the open night. The troll turned, determined to follow, but then it sniffed the air once again and reached back one enormous hand. Its fingers found the child and plucked them up, and with a single gulp, the troll swallowed Brian Kagawa. That's wild. God bless. I ain't see that coming. Dang. They've been fighting all so hard for the baby. They almost at the finish line. And the troll done ate the baby. I hope he ain't eat him. They went through too much. Chapter 102. Apollo crumbled up the hill of bones, and now that he was out of the cave, free from the cloister air down there, he could smell himself. He carried with him a cloud of spiced gasoline. The bath he'd taken in the old man's Bolivian remained in full effect. Maybe that's what had saved him down in the darkness. The troll hadn't been able to smell his flesh. But this would only be a moment of grace. In seconds, that troll would be up the hill. And then what? What did I tell you? Why did I tell you that story? What did I want you to hear? Jorgen's voice sounded so loud in his head that he expected it to echo through the woods. The words so surprising, so unexpected, Apollo could hardly register what they meant. Then there was no time for parsing out the meaning because a sound played from the tunnel, a long, low, rumbling roar, and a moment later, an arm emerged from the cave's mouth, the tips of this enormous hand bearing those jagged nails. The nails slammed into the stones, the children's bones, and sent them flying in all directions. The beast dragged itself out of the passageway into the open air. It stood more than 3 stories tall. Apollo stiffened at the top of the hill. How could he defeat such a thing? Why did I tell you that story? What did I want you to hear? The troll lumbered up the hill. It moved with such gracelessness that Apollo wondered if it might be wounded. Had Emma heard it before it got out here? As it climbed up the hill toward him, it made faint coughing sounds, sputtering, as if something was caught in his throat. Apollo took 3 steps back, but where would he go? The northern forest surrounded him. Even though the modern world was less than a half a mile away, it might as well be in some German wood 1,000 years ago. Something silver shined in the moonlight and caught Apollo's attention. The servant lid still there, right where he and Emma had left it. And if the lid was still there, then the sheep's head would be too. Why did I tell you the story? What did I want you to hear? Apollo rose to his feet and lifted the lid of the serving tray. The sheep's head remaining eye watched him. Apollo picked up the head and held it in front of him, balanced one open palm. In the other hand, he held the lid. The troll might not be able to smell him because of the Bernivian, but this boiled flesh might tempt. The troll's head jutted forward like a hound's. A moment of stillness, then the thing sniffed the air, snorting. It croaked again, but the gagging soon passed. Apollo had the sheep's head out and watched the troll sniff the second time. It squeezed its enormous eyes shut and cocked its head, listening for a sound. I'm right here, you goddamn troll, Apollo shouted, but if you're too stupid to catch me. With that, Apollo turned and ran, holding the sheep's head high and the servant lid in the other hand. Like Ascaladdin, he sprinted deeper into the northern forest, the troll tearing after him through the trees. Apollo scurried like a wild rabbit, weaving through the thickest stands of trees, places even the troll couldn't penetrate. He hid inside while the creature stalked in circles, bellowing and bashing at the branches, stopping occasionally to stoop forward and paw at his throat, slapping at irritant, then righting it itself. It sounded like his baby stuck in his throat. He used such moments to dart out again, aiming for the next copse of trees. Pursued again by the predator, then hiding inside and shivering with adrenaline and fear. They moved like this as the night passed, and Apollo hardly felt cold, hardly registered fatigue. There were moments when he wasn't running that he swore he heard Emma's voice in the wind calling out to him, but he knew that if a troll was here with him, then Emma and Brian had escaped. This idea fueled him and fired his courage. Apollo remained tucked inside the circle of pignut trees. The troll soon appeared. It heaved loudly now, and his mouth dripped a jelly as green as his skin. The troll spat this out and coughed loudly, sounding like a car engine that wouldn't turn over. It sniffed at the trees, bumped the side of his head against the hickory, testing them. Nearly dawn now. When the sun rose, it would turn to stone, and that would be the end of it. Not 20 yards from here, Apollo saw the large clearing he'd come across when he followed Emma the day before. Apollo rose to his feet and bolted. When he reached the open ground, he set down the sheep's head and the lid. He placed the head so it cradled in the lid, face up and exposed, easily scented. Apollo ran straight on from there, back into the trees on the other side of the clearing. He found the scarlet oak with the branches low enough to scale. It hadn't lost all its leaves, so he disappeared among them when he climbed. My head is right there on the ground, Apollo shouted. Why don't you just try and crack my skull? The trees at the far edge of the forest clearing didn't part. They shattered. The troll swept them aside with renewed fury. It entered the clearing so quickly it seemed to be flying. As it moved, it lowered its head, its jaws expanding, teeth plowing through the dirt and snow, inhaling all of it just to get at that sheep's head. It clamped its teeth down, and in a moment there was a metallic clank that made even Apollo's mouth clench. The troll threw his head back, bringing one hand to his mouth, and shot, spitting out what it couldn't swallow. The lid cracked and bent, hit a tree trunk, and then the clang echoed. Now the troll thrashed in the clearing. It fell into a frenzy. It threw out his arms, digging his nails into tree trunks and pulling them right up out the earth, torn roots dangling down like veins. It tossed those trees in the air, then tore up more. The troll lost itself in the ferocity, mindless thoughtlessness. Apollo watched from his perch in the tree. He couldn't shout taunts at it, couldn't make jokes or jabs because he felt small and terrified. The troll created such chaos that it flung one tree right up into the air, and it tumbled right back down on his head. The beast fell on his back, pinned beneath the large hickory tree. It heaved there on his back, panting and undone. The sky had gone from black to purple. The troll kicked his legs to try to escape, but it had literally no fight left. Apollo! Apollo! He leaped down from his hiding place. It was Emma's voice, quite close. She came into the clearing through the gap in the trees the troll had caused. Her hands were in the air, waving back and forth. Where's Brian? Apollo shouted. Emma didn't hesitate. She climbed down on the troll's belly. He ate him. All this time I've been trying to catch up. He ate Brian. She stomped on it. It opened its mouth, but could only throw its head back. Was it defeated or was it gloating? The threat of sunlight lingered in the horizon. Apollo ran to Emma. In his coat pockets was a knife he pulled from Jorgen's throat. When he brought it out, he plunged it into the troll's flesh, up near the top of the belly. He sank it in until even the handle disappeared. The creature thrashed now, and the tree on his chest buckled. Apollo pulled the blade downward, splitting the creature's skin apart. He pulled down until his shoulders burned. He cut, and the belly opened wider before them. The dark green liquid, the consistency of mud, pooled out. The smell of sewer water filled their nostrils, and neither noticed or cared. The troll's legs kicked more frantically. The pitch of his foghorn bellowing went louder, and his arm slapped at the tree trunk until the hickory went up at an angle like a seesaw and flipped over. Apollo found the belly sack, but didn't dare plunge the knife inside for fear of hitting their son. He dug in with his hands, and Emma did too. They tore at that sack, the texture of a hot air balloon. The stomach split open, and thinner yellow liquid sprayed out. Ugh, this is so gross. A thinner yellow liquid sprayed out and soaked their faces and their clothes. It meant nothing to them. They hardly noticed. And inside they found their son, tucked in a ball and still wriggling, swallowed whole and thus still alive. They pulled him out into the world, Brian Kagwa, the only child ever born twice. They fell away from the troll's body, crawling as quickly as their weary bodies could manage. The sun rose and daylight, true daylight, found them all. The troll trembled, and his body stiffened, and his sickly greenish color drained. It made one last sound, a whimper, that sounded like relief, and darkened as it turned to stone. A moment later, a large shape broke apart. Now it looked like a mound of boulders, nothing more. To any passerby, it would look like a small hill there in the northern forest. Emma didn't wait. She rose on her unsteady legs, cradling Brian so close to her chest, and started for the woods, the path they had taken a night ago. Apollo lingered. He approached the stones, skirting around them until he found the largest one, what would have been the troll's head. He could still make out the soft depression of those great blind eyes. He brushed each one with a finger. He leaned close to the stone and pressed his forehead to it. He felt as if he was finally burying what had been haunting him ever since he was a child. A funeral not for his father, but his fatherlessness. Let the monster rest. Okay. Okay, it's the last chapter, so we're going to finish this. And we's done. Chapter 103. Fantastic. Apollo found his way to the path where he saw a set of footprints. Emma's tread, but deeper than when he trailed her before. This extra weight of a child in her arms. He followed and followed them, Emma hunched over and moving slowly. She had her coat unzipped and the boy tucked inside, his body against hers. This was the Parker they'd taken from Jorgen's house. It was so big it had plenty of room for both of them. She'd done her best to clean off his face, but his hair remained matted and muddy green. Apollo and Emma looked even worse. Brian Kagawa, 10 months old, squinted at the sky, at the canopy of bare tree limbs. He didn't look frightened or wounded, not even shocked. Instead, It seemed as if he was thawing in daylight. Neither Apollo nor Emma spoke to him or each other. Brian didn't move his head much, but his eyes scrolled left and right from one tree to the next. When a bird on a tree chirped or called, Brian stared at it and pursed his lips as if to answer back. Finally, they left the woods and reached the paved parts of the park. They passed the carousel and the George Suffolk Sr. band shell. Strange to see these places again. Apollo hadn't expected he'd be back this way. He hadn't truly believed he'd come out of this alive. Soon they reached the bathroom where he'd spent the night. The door to the ladies' room hadn't been fixed, only pulled shut. A few strips of emergency tape were easily pulled down. The sinks worked, and they washed Brian's hair clean and cleaned his face. They each did a little dabbing, at least to clear out his ears and eyebrows, and swished their mouths. Apollo realized the red string had come off his finger. Who could say when? Maybe when his hands were inside the troll's belly, pulling Brian free. Maybe it lay at the center of a stone in the northern forest. That seemed improbable enough to be true. Okay. We have to get Brian to a hospital, Apollo finally said as they left the bathroom. They still looked rough, a feral family, but at least they didn't have bits of troll guts stuck between their teeth. Emma didn't answer. She hadn't looked away from Brian yet. I want to call Kim in, she said tentatively. She's still a doctor, and it's going to be pretty remarkable if we just show up at a hospital. Kim will be discreet. Apollo watched as they made a few steps, but finally laughed quietly. Well, I know she can keep a secret. Apollo couldn't be aware of this yet, but Kim had never cashed that check he gave her. Instead, she slipped it under his apartment door days ago. 2 words written on the face. I'm sorry. Maybe someone will pick us up, she said, gesturing ahead to Woodhaven Boulevard. No surprise, but they were the only people on foot at this hour. The early morning traffic clocked at speeds of 50 miles an hour. The only thing that could stop these drivers was a red light, and even that might only slow them down about 35. Nobody will be giving some random hitchhiking family a lift, especially not with the way they looked. Apollo couldn't call 911. He had no cell phone power left, and there was no working payphones on the street. No yellow or green taxis were out, and even livery cabs were a rare occurrence. Some would suggest running out into the street to hail a passing car, but such suggestions would never be made by anyone familiar with the drivers in Queens, okay? Imagine slaying trolls and then being killed by a hit and run driver. They definitely would smash you and move on. We have to wait on the Q11, Apollo said. The bus stop had a bench. Emma nodded and cradled Brian against her belly. She raised her free hand and extended a finger, brought it close to Brian's face. The move looked so tentative. Brian Kagwa was the only living thing that made Emma Valentine tremble. Finally, she brought her finger to the boy's chin. She touched him gently there and rubbed the skin. She put a finger to his lips. She pointed into the partly open mouth. He has teeth, she said softly. They both shivered with pleasure in seeing them, followed by a throbbing sadness in their rib cage. They'd come in while they weren't around. He had cried as he was teething, had there been anyone there to soothe him. Apollo slipped a hand inside the parka and held one of Brian's feet. He squeezed and the toes wiggled. Apollo closed his eyes and grinned. Apollo saw the days and the months and the years to come playing against the screen of his eyes. He saw Apollo and Emma wrangling Brian into learning how to use the potty, waking often each night for many nights when it was time for them to go to graduate to sleeping without a diaper. sneaking vegetables into his diet and coaxing him into kindergarten, the tedium of doing homework with him, the intimidation when his book work became too complicated for them to understand, cleaning him after his first real fight, the first time he stole money from them, the first time they noticed, the faults the boy would find with each of them, the age when he learned to think of his father as a failure, the age when he told his father so. All this and worse was going to happen to them in the years to come, and thank God, thank God, thank God. Apollo felt dizzy with his appreciation. He leaned into Emma as she squeezed Brian's other foot. They both sobbed at the bus stop. Brian caught sight of an airplane and watched it thread across the sky. There's something I always wanted to ask you, Apollo eventually said. What was your third wish? For the first time since they left the cave, Emma looked at Apollo instead of Brian. My first wish was to meet a good man. My second wish was to have a healthy child. Yes. And my third wish was for a life full of adventure. Okay, well, you got that. You hear me? Be careful. You wish for adventure. You've been fighting trolls. You've been hunted as a witch. You done beat up your family, murked your son. You definitely had adventure. Some time passed, but neither of them counted how long. It was still early morning. Then Emma leaned forward slightly and gestured with her chin. Down the long stretch of Woodhaven Boulevard, they could see a bus, still a few minutes away. It occurred to Apollo that the driver gave them a hard time if they didn't have the fare. It sounded impossible, but who could say? They were a family trying to get home, but who knew what driver might see? Maybe he wouldn't extend a bit of charity to a trio like them. Brian and Emma had been exposed to the elements for months. They needed to get on that bus and reach the care of a professional. That incoming Q11 took on the aspect of a lifeboat. Apollo found himself concocting all sorts of speeches to try to explain why they had no money to pay the fare, but then remembered how he ended up at this bus stop the night before. The Metro card was still in his pocket. He slipped it out and showed Emma. A gift from the NYPD, he said. The Q11 approached, its interior lights blazing. At this hour, it was the brightest thing in the world. It might as well have been a chariot pulling the sun across the sky. Nothing less would do for Emma, Brian, and Apollo. They stood as it slowed. And they lived happily ever after, Apollo whispered. Emma leaned into him. Today, she said, and they lived happily today. Is that enough, he asked, looking at her. That's everything, my love. I know that's right. And that's the end. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Slap boxing with Jesus. That's funny. Yeah, that's what's up. I'm glad to have found out how the story ends because I was so disappointed with the Apple TV. Just doing one season, never canceling the show, and never doing season 2. So, wound up being a pretty good book. Troll got a little nasty, but I guess I'm glad they back together as a family. I know if I was Apollo, it'd still be hard for me. I wish you'd see the show on how bad she did that man. She had that man, like, he lost his eyesight. She did that man dirty. And I'd still be stuck a little bit on how bad I got done. So, family, I appreciate you as always. We gonna wrap the show up for tonight. Night. I hope that you enjoyed Changeling as much as I enjoyed it. And I look forward to starting a new book next Thursday. So family, join us Tuesday as we continue our discussion of what we talking about? Ego. And we are doing the spiritual aspects, spiritual identity of ego. We have the spiritual ego left, which I'm very interested in seeing what the spiritual ego says. I'm thinking some part of it's going to resonate with me. So, but we'll figure it out together. And then we'll start doing some questions to help us assess how we are functioning or if we are functioning in these egos. And if you can't make it Tuesday, I hope to see you back here Thursday. I don't know what book we're going to start, but we are going to start a new book for Thursday Night Book Club. So I look forward to you. I might do a poll next week to see what people would suggest, but look forward to a new book. We'll figure it out. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your energy. And you could be anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here. And much gratitude. Before we go, I want to remind you that you are a creative being, that you deserve to enjoy life, that you are emotionally balanced, that you can welcome sensuality into your life, and most importantly, I want to remind you that you are worthy and lovable. Thank you again, family. And until next week, peace. I want to remind you that you are worthy and lovable. Thank you again, family. And until next week.